Let's go. Remember, we saw that the plural of davar in that exercise was identified by the plural ending eem, right? We saw that right up front, divarim, but we noticed that there's a schwa there, where our original lexical entry, our vocab word that we learned, has a comets there, right? Now, I'll tell you very simply what the reason is for this, all right? It has to do with pronunciation. Hebrew words, unless otherwise marked, are accented on the last syllable. So in davar, you have 2 syllables, the accent would be here. When we add the syllable of the plural, the accent moves over, and we have a 3-syllable word with the accent on the end. Divarim. Get it? Now, just due to the natural way people pronounce stuff, the further you get from the accent, the less clearly you say syllables. We do this all the time as well in English. I think, I'm no historical linguistic scholar here, but I think this is essentially the origin of the concept of schwa, where schwas came from. People just forgot to speak vowels out real clearly. In spoken languages, you do this all the time. So there's almost a rule that works in Hebrew that if you get 3 syllables from the accent, you're going to get a schwa. All right? Now, to explain, that would be far too easy. We have to explain this in much more difficult terms. All right? Let's go back and introduce the idea of naming syllables. Okay? Like Greek, we can assign names to all these syllables. But unlike Greek, the key component to naming syllables, what I'm talking about, Greek, ultima, penultimate, antepenultimate, right? There we're naming syllables by their position in the word, right? We always start with the ultima, which is by definition the last or ultimate syllable, right? The penultimate is the one before it. The antepenultimate is the one before the last syllable, right? Now, in Hebrew, we sort of have the same system, except our anchor, our starting point, is not automatically the last syllable, but is the accented syllable, which, as it turns out, is usually the last syllable. But that's more by coincidence than by design. The syllable that has the accent, sometimes called the tone, or the tone syllable, tone being a way of describing the accent, the syllable that has the accent is called the tonic syllable, as in gin, and. All right? Tonic syllable. The one before the tonic is called the pre-tonic. All right? Now, you don't have to know all this stuff, but here's what happens. Here's our word davar. How many syllables? 2. We're going to make it plural. How do we make it plural? Well, we add the ending eem. How many syllables do we have now? 3. Let's mark the syllables. Da. Now, remember, originally, the first syllable was open, right? The second syllable was closed. But when we add an ending, the ending eem is called a vocalic suffix. This is another sort of technical term that we'll use from time to time, because it's a suffix that begins with a vowel. All right, there's 2 kinds of suffixes, vocalic suffixes and consonantal suffixes. When you add a vocalic suffix to a Hebrew word that ends in a consonant, what about the syllable division? Do you see what's going to happen? Because each syllable has to begin with a consonant and not a vowel, the minute you add a vocalic suffix, the consonant here, the range, now becomes part of the next syllable and has to flip over. This isn't a big deal, but you'll see the syllable breaks. Now we have an open syllable, now we have another open syllable, now we have the final syllable. Okay? Now, which one of these syllables is the tonic syllable? The last one, because the accent is moved to the end. Divari. That means that this syllable now is called the pre-tonic syllable, and this syllable is called the pre-tonic, or the one before the accent. It's really pretty simple. Okay. Now this word you have to know, because it's in the pro-pretonic syllable that you will get, as a general rule of thumb, what's called vowel reduction. This is a fundamental principle of spelling, and even though it's a bit complicated and spins off into a host of variables, there's one basic rule that covers about 90% of your life, and here it is. Comets shortens to schwa in the pro-pretonic syllable. That's even in your book, and this one I would highlight. I think it's at the bottom of page 16. In fact, it's the very last phrase on the bottom of page 16 before example number 8. Comets shortens to schwa in the pro-pretonic. You'll see this happening consistently with words that are of the pattern of davar when we add endings. So we have to worry about two things when we add a plural ending. We have to get the right ending, and that's by far the more important thing. Right? You get the ending right, you spot the ending, you can tell that it's a plural noun and not a singular noun. But secondly, we have to be alert to the possibility of some changes in the vowels. And if you know how vowel reduction works, that comet shortens to schwa in a pro-pretonic, if you run into a word where you don't recognize it, now davar is common enough that we do, if you get to a word in reading that you don't recognize it, and you spot the plural ending, and you say, somehow this must be a singular noun, but I'm not sure I recognize it, and you see a schwa in the pro-pretonic position, run the rule backwards. What was this schwa? Probably a comet. If comet shortens schwa in the pro-pretonic, then a pro-pretonic schwa probably could revert back to a comet. Get it? Run the rule backwards, and now you've come up with, in fact, what is the dictionary citation, or a word that may have occurred on a flashcard in your pocket. Okay? All right, I want to make one more, we've got to address one more topic, and then I think we'll send you home to play with this a little bit. And in this afternoon's class, we'll try to sort out some of the fine points.